Okay, so today we're going to dive into this really fun interview that Martin Short did.
Right.
With Amy Poehler on her show.
Mm-hmm.
Good Hang.
Yeah, Good Hang with Amy Poehler.
Good Hang with Amy Poehler.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the YouTube transcript.
Yeah.
And we're just going to kind of pick it apart and see what we can learn about Martin Short.
Yeah, I love this. I love when icons talk about icons.
Right.
He's always so fascinating.
It's really interesting to see what they'll say
What they'll reveal.
about each other when they're not even trying to reveal things.
Right, exactly.
So let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
So, one thing that really stood out was how much his peers clearly just love and admire this guy. Like, Tina Fey just gushes about him right from the start.
Oh, yeah.
She even confesses to having, like, a childhood crush on him after seeing him in that Toronto production of Godspell.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Which, by the way, also featured Gilda Radner, Andrea Martin, and Eugene Levy. Like,
Oh, my God.
can you imagine being...
What a lineup in that audience.
Right. Just an incredible concentration of comedic talent.
It's insane to think about.
Yeah.
But she was also really interested in, Short's feelings about his career, especially those early successes like Father of the Bride and Three Amigos.
Yeah. Yeah, she was curious if he ever felt pigeonholed,
Yeah, did he feel...
Or if he felt unfulfilled creatively by those roles.
Yeah, kind of stuck in a certain type of character.
Right.
Yeah, and it's funny because looking back at his career, it doesn't seem like he ever really was.
No, he doesn't.
He's done so much different stuff like film, television, stage.
Exactly. He's been all over the place.
Yeah.
And playing such a wide range of characters.
And wildly different characters.
Yeah. I mean, I think that speaks to his adaptability.
For sure.
And his versatility as a performer.
Yeah.
And that's got to be crucial for, like, long-term creative fulfillment in a field like that.
Absolutely.
It's so dynamic, you have to be able to, like, shift and change.
Totally. And then there's Maya Rudolph, who describes him as evergreen, which I just love.
Oh, I love that description.
It's so perfect.
It's so fitting.
Right. Like, he's always funny. He's always up for being funny.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about this, like, unbridled joy that he brings to comedy.
Yeah, it's like he just genuinely loves it.
Yeah, and she mentions this thing that I found so funny. Like, she was surprised and delighted to find out that he has his own Canadian stamp.
Oh, that's right.
And she's, like, wondering, is it him or is it one of his characters?
Well, yeah, because he's had so many iconic characters.
So many.
Especially from SCTV.
Right. Like, could it be Ed Grimley on a stamp?
It could be.
Who knows?
You never know.
But it is pretty cool.
Yeah, it says a lot about how Canada,
yeah,
like, really embraces and celebrates its comedic icons.
Right. They have Catherine O'Hara.
Mm-hmm.
They have Jim Carrey, Mike Myers.
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive roster.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a whole comedic hall of fame on stamps.
Absolutely.
And then there's Colin Quinn. And he had a funny story about how he was first introduced to Martin Short's comedy.
Oh, right.
He's on like a studio tour or something.
Yeah, he was a kid.
Yeah, and he saw Ed Grimley like walking around.
Ah, that's a great visual.
Right, and this was before he had ever even seen SNL.
Oh, wow.
So it was just like this bizarre, out-of-context Ed Grimley sighting.
It's like seeing a cartoon character.
Totally.
Come to life.
And then he talks about how much he and his brother loved Three Amigos.
Oh, yeah.
But their grandfather just completely didn't get it.
Didn't get it at all.
Like, he just went right over his head.
Right. Which I think is kind of interesting, because it shows how comedy can be so generational.
Totally.
Like, what one generation finds hilarious, another might just be completely baffled by.
Yeah, it's like a different sense of humor for every
generation.
Decade, almost.
Mm-hmm.
And Colin also asks some more, like, personal questions.
Yeah.
About, the behind-the-scenes stuff at SCTV and early SNL.
Yeah, about, like, rivalries and relationships within the cast.
Yeah, like, what was the dynamic really like?
Right. Was there any tension?
Yeah, who was hooking up with who?
Yeah. It's like that kind of gossipy stuff that I think we all
want to know.
We all kind of want to know, yeah. Especially when it comes to these, like, legendary comedy groups.
Right. It's like you're trying to...
You want to know, like, what the secret sauce was?
Yeah.
What was going on behind the scenes that fueled all that creativity?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, speaking of SNL, they talked about the 50th anniversary show.
Oh, yes.
And how COVID kind of threw a wrench into things.
Right.
Short actually got COVID around that time.
Yeah, he wasn't able to fully participate in everything because of it.
And he wasn't the only one either.
No, it's crazy how many people from the SNL alumni got COVID.
Right.
It was like Tina Fey, Maya Rudolph, Colin Quinn.
Wow.
Amy Schumer. Meryl Markup.
It's like a who's who of SNL.
Yeah, it just goes to show how widespread it really was at that time.
Yeah, even like a huge event like that wasn't immune to COVID.
No, nobody was immune.
So then they get into touring and Short's approach to like trying out new material.
Yeah, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, he says he doesn't really do it.
He doesn't
Workshop things beforehand.
Which is so different from like stand-up comedians.
Yeah, they're always
working out their material.
learning their material.
Yeah, in smaller clubs and stuff.
But Short's like, nope, I'm just going to go out there and
just do it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool, you know.
It's a different philosophy.
It is.
Right? Like he's trusting that
energy of the moment.
Yeah, and the audience is excited to see him and Steve Martin.
Right. They're coming specifically for that.
And they're going to give him an honest laugh.
Mm.
He even tells this story about Jack Benny.
Oh, yeah.
Who got like a huge standing ovation.
A massive standing ovation.
And Jack Benny's response was,
he said,
I'm not that good.
I'm not that good.
Which is just so funny.
That's classic Jack Benny right there.
Right. Like even when you're getting all this praise, you're still kind of like...
Yeah, poking fun at yourself.
Yeah, keeping it real.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like Short and Martin get that same kind of reaction, like just for being themselves.
Just for showing up on stage together.
Right.
The audience goes wild.
Yeah. And you can tell how much he just loves touring with Steve Martin.
Oh, yeah. It seems like a really positive experience for both of them.
He talks about how they're both committed to giving the audience a really good show.
Right, because they know that people have invested so much to be there.
Yeah.
Like getting babysitters.
Traveling.
Spending money.
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah, and they don't take that lightly.
No.
They want to make sure it's worth it.
Okay, let's talk about awards.
Awards.
So he tells this hilarious story about winning the SAG Award.
Oh, yes. For Only Murders in the Building.
Only Murders in the Building.
Mm-hmm.
He was at home watching The Brutalist.
Which I've never heard of.
Me neither. But apparently it's like his go-to thing.
It's a comfort movie or something.
Yeah. And he was so sure he wasn't going to win.
He wasn't even paying attention.
No, he was just like chilling at home.
Right.
And then suddenly he wins.
And it's a huge surprise.
Which I guess happens sometimes.
Yeah, you never know with these award shows.
But it's funny because he also talks about how he's been nominated for so many awards.
Yeah.
But he's only won like one Emmy.
One Emmy out of like a ton of nominations.
Yeah, so many.
Which I think a lot of people can relate to.
Oh, for sure. Like the feeling of being nominated but not winning.
Yeah, you're kind of in this weird limbo.
Yeah, like it's great to be recognized.
But you also kind of want to win.
Right. And he describes this like internal physiological moment.
Oh, yeah.
That happens when you think you might have to give a speech.
Right. It's like your body goes into panic mode.
Totally. And then you have to remember all these names to thank.
Which is a lot of pressure.
It is.
Especially on live TV.
Yeah. And he talks about how much he admired Timothy Chalamet's acceptance speech.
Oh, that's right.
And now he has this like power move planned.
Oh, I love this.
If he wins again.
What is it?
He's going to lower the microphone.
Lower the microphone.
Like really dramatically lower it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Right.
That's a great visual.
It's just such a funny little detail.
Yeah, it's like a subtle way to take control of the situation.
Yeah, and inject some humor into it.
Exactly.
So Martin Short.
So Martin Short.
So speaking of Only Murders in the Building.
Yes, let's talk about that.
He talks about how the show came about.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Martin actually had the original idea.
Oh, that's right.
It was going to be about 3 older people.
Solving crimes in their building.
Yeah, like a classic whodunit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually inspired by a suggestion from Sandy Gallen.
Interesting.
Yeah. But then they brought in Selena Gomez.
Which I think was a brilliant move.
Oh, totally.
It completely changes the dynamic.
Right. It's not just like Murder, She Wrote anymore.
No, it's got this fresh intergenerational aspect.
Yeah. And he admits that he was a little hesitant about working with her at first.
Really?
Yeah, because he's like, she's so famous.
She is.
And she started so young.
Right.
Like maybe she'd be a diva.
Yeah. You never know.
But he was completely blown away by her.
Oh, wow.
He said she was so professional.
That's great to hear.
And punctual and talented.
Mm-hmm.
He also raved about the guest stars on the show.
Oh, yeah. They've had some amazing guest stars.
Right. Like every episode is just packed with
top-notch talent.
A-listers.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he also makes this observation about how people seem to be more afraid of Steve Martin than Amy Poehler.
Oh, yeah. He said that.
Yeah. And he thinks it might be because Steve is quieter.
Yeah. Like he's got this kind of quiet intensity.
Yeah. And Short thinks it might be like a power move.
Interesting.
Right, like he's not trying to be the loudest person in the room.
Yeah, he's letting his work speak for itself.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think there's something to that.
Totally.
Like sometimes silence can be more powerful than words, especially in an industry like that.
Okay, let's talk about Jiminy Glick.
Oh, yes, one of his most iconic characters.
Right. He tells this great story about improvising on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And he did this bit where he shushed Edie Falco.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently it was like a reference to something from her childhood.
Like a sensitive spot?
Yeah, but in a playful way.
Yeah, like a teasing way.
And he said he even surprised himself with that one.
That's the beauty of improv, right?
Yeah, you never know what's going to come out.
It's so spontaneous.
And he talked about how the Jiminy Glick videos are still so popular.
They are.
Like people are constantly sharing them online.
Yeah, they're like little serotonin boosts.
Totally. And he specifically mentioned the interview with Bill Hader.
Oh, yes, that's a classic.
Which is so funny because Bill Hader is just like
cracking up the whole time.
He can't even contain himself.
No, it's like infectious laughter.
Yeah, and it's funny because Fred Armisen once said that Jiminy Glick was kind of mean.
Oh, yeah.
And he was joking, but Short actually addressed it.
Yeah, he didn't shy away from it.
He said it reminded him of his dad.
Interesting.
Yeah, his dad was really sarcastic and teasing,
and
it was kind of his way of showing affection.
It's like a weird love language.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common, actually.
Yeah, like in a lot of families.
Yeah, it's like a way to bond through humor.
Yeah. And he tells another funny story about interviewing Mel Brooks and Steven Spielberg.
Oh my gosh, what a duo.
Right. And of course he's being all rude and absurd.
As Jiminy Glick does.
Yeah, and there's this bit where he just like slowly crawls away to get snacks.
While Spielberg is talking.
Yeah, in the middle of Spielberg telling a story.
That's amazing.
Right. It's just so ridiculous.
And it's so committed to the bit.
Yeah, and it totally works.
Yeah, it's classic Jiminy Glick.
So then they talk about how Short has a stamp in Canada.
Oh, that's right. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah, but they go into more detail.
Okay.
Like it's not just him, it's multiple of his characters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's even better.
Right. And he also has a coin.
A coin?
Yeah.
Wow, they really love him in Canada.
We do.
That's great.
And he mentions that Catherine O'Hara, Jim Carrey, and Mike Myers also have stamps.
Yeah, we mentioned that too.
Yeah, but it's just worth reiterating how much Canada loves its comedians.
They really do. It's like a point of national pride.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then they briefly touch on Short's time on SNL, which was actually pretty short.
It was only like a year.
Yeah, but still really impactful.
Oh, yeah, he made a big impression.
And then Amy Poehler talks about starting at SNL just 2 weeks after 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she talks about how there was this uncertainty about whether comedy was even appropriate at that time.
Yeah, it was a really dark time.
Yeah.
And people were grieving and traumatized.
And it's funny because we saw something similar with the pandemic.
Oh, absolutely.
Like at first everyone was kind of like,
is it okay to laugh right now?
yeah, is this the right time for jokes?
But then you realize that,
We need it.
yeah, we need laughter more than ever to cope with the stress and the anxiety.
Yeah. And Short agrees. He says comedy is life-saving.
I love that.
Right?
It's so true.
It's so true.
Like, laughter can really get you through tough times.
Okay, so then they talk about family.
Family.
And Short describes growing up in a funny Irish Catholic family and how important it was to be liked within that family.
Right, because it was a close-knit group.
Yeah, and he tells some hilarious stories about his dad's sarcasm.
Oh, yeah, his dad sounds like a real character.
Yeah, like he would say these things at the dinner table.
That would just crack everyone up.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you can see how that kind of humor
influenced him.
Yeah, influenced his own comedic style. And he talks about how he has this same kind of playful banter with Steve Martin.
Oh, yeah, they're always like...
Yeah, ribbing each other.
Dating insults.
Yeah, but it's all out of love.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
he backs up their close friendship.
Yeah, and he contrasts that with Amy Poehler and Tina Fey.
Oh, yeah, how they're more like supportive and encourage.
Which is interesting, right? Like different comedic duos had different dynamics.
Absolutely.
Different ways of interacting.
Yeah, and it's all valid.
Totally.
It just depends on their personalities and their relationship.
So then we get this really fun little detour into the world of fake food.
Fake food.
Yeah. Apparently Amy Poehler has this whole collection of fake food on set.
Like props.
Yeah, and Short just goes to town with it.
Oh, I love that.
He picks up a Cheez-Its box and a Nutri-Grain bar with a face on it.
That's hilarious.
And some candle bread.
Candle bread.
And felt garlic and a tomato.
Oh, my God.
It's just so silly and random.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and he even jokes that his love of prop humor might have kept him from the big money.
Meaning like bigger roles or something.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think his fans love him for it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's part of what makes him so unique.
Totally.
And so endearing.
Okay, so towards the end, they talk about things that bring them joy and laughter.
Mm-hmm.
Short mentions loving Annie Hall.
Oh.
Right. And he talks about how much he values his friendships with other funny people.
Yeah, like his comedy buddies.
Yeah, and he tells this hilarious story about having lunch with Christopher Guest.
Oh, no. What happened?
Christopher Guest was like immediately negative about a film that Short was working on.
Oh, no, he didn't hold back.
No, he was just like
Brutal honesty.
brutally honest.
Yeah, that's how it is with close friends sometimes.
Right.
Especially in comedy.
Yeah, they can just tell each other the truth.
Yeah.
And then Short reveals that he's a news junkie.
Really?
Yeah, he watches all the news channels.
Interesting.
Yeah, but then he also admits that he has these huge gaps in his pop culture knowledge.
Like what?
Like he hasn't seen Saint Elsewhere since it aired.
Wow, that's a pretty big gap.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny to see that contrast.
Yeah, like he's super informed about current events,
Yeah.
but then he's totally clueless about some classic TV shows.
Totally.
It's very relatable.
Yeah.
I think we all have those gaps in our knowledge.
So yeah, that was our deep dive into the comedic mind of Martin Short.
And what a deep dive it was.
Right.
So many great insights and anecdotes.
Yeah, and I think the biggest takeaway is just how much joy he brings to everything he does.
Absolutely.
Like whether he's acting or touring or just hanging out with friends.
He's always finding the humor.
Yeah, he's just a naturally funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something we can all learn from.
Definitely.
Like how to embrace the absurdity of life.
Yeah. And not take ourselves too seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What are some things that bring you joy and laughter?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think it's important to find those things.
Yeah.
Make you laugh.
And hold on to them.
And hold on to them.
Yeah.
Because laughter is truly the best medicine.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.
Oscar.